Hello, good evening. This is Aware on the Air, a weekly program of commentary and news on the themes of war and racism. Tonight, our theme, I guess, will be Hail to the Blue, White, and Red in anticipation of Bastille Day coming up on Saturday, the 14th of July. So this is being recorded on Tuesday, July 10th, 2012, and I'll have some more words to say about France and the French Revolution and much more recent events there. In the news this week, more British soldiers killed by an Afghan officer. This has become so common that there's now a term for it, the green on blue attacks. Killings of NATO personnel by those in uniform in the Afghan police forces and military. Meanwhile, again, 6 or 7 more American NATO soldiers were killed by a roadside bomb. The incident came as donors meeting in Japan pledged to give Afghanistan $18 billion more in civilian aid over 4 years, including the period during which foreign troops are to pull out. Violence has recently spiked. At least 14 civilians were killed on Sunday. The violence is increasing also in Iraq, which we were urged to consider a victory because it had been pacified and there was no further violence there. So again, it's coming apart, it's deteriorating, but we are pledged to leave Afghanistan by the end of the year, except, of course, there will be more training troops on the ground. There will always be an exception, a loophole, which actually commits us to having some people there perhaps as so-called trainers for the next 10 years. And Afghanistan was recently classified as a non-NATO ally by the USA. Our Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, went there to announce that, which is also an implicit commitment then to supplying them with a great deal more material, weapons, and the like. So will we see any relief from the killing and the expense of these wars? Well, one would think so and hope so. But there's before me a news story in USA Today on the 5th of July. Headline, Defense cutbacks hinder the economy. Less spending for war saps growth. So this predicts a lot more unemployment, job losses. This says tighter defense budgets are starting to pinch the nation's economy, slowing a sluggish recovery even before sharper spending cuts could kick in next year. Military defense spending fell by about $12 billion or 3% from October through May, compared with the same period in the previous federal budget year, according to the Congressional Budget Office. So we have a dilemma, it appears. Everyone, especially on the right, is calling for less and less spending, and yet as we try to spend less on the military and the endless wars in the Middle East, we're told that this will lead to job losses. And again, some people will describe this situation that we're in as military Keynesianism or weaponized Keynesianism, where the only way of keeping the economy afloat and unemployment down to an acceptable level, or at least a tolerable one, is more and more military spending.
Well, so, of course, there is an alternative to this. You could spend that money
yes.
on more school teachers, more bridge repair and infrastructure that will be productive in the future.
Yeah.
But I suppose the right wing would be opposed to that as un-American.
Yeah. So another indication of what's going on is the Pentagon contracting, and this is something I'll come back to after we've heard from David, and I want to describe some of the dilemmas that our policymakers are facing. They're constantly told that they must cut spending, decrease the size of government, and as of course the largest and most expensive part of government is the military. Many people don't seem to acknowledge the fact that the military is a government bureaucracy with all that that implies about inefficiency, lack of productivity, and the like. But we'll come back to that. So let's go to David and see what he has for us today.
Well, my friend has passed along another letter he received from his friend, T. Earl Grayfellow, and he thought it was something deserving of further publication, and I agreed I would pass it on. T. Earl starts, "I can only agree with you, my dear friend. The crisis of illegal immigration has become a threat to the very existence of the nation. Never before in our history have illegal immigrants poured across our borders as they do today. They threaten the very fabric of our national culture. The free enterprise system is at stake. They threaten to overwhelm our institutions, our schools, hospitals, and jails. They constitute a dangerous drag on our economy, taking jobs from real Americans. Even our beloved English language is under attack. I have a remedy, however. Give the police the power to write writs of instant deportation. Such writs would not be subject to judicial review, but would take immediate effect, saving time and expense. Left-wing judges could not raise irrelevant questions of constitutionality or due process. We should have action, not inaction, as we do now. It would be very efficient. Anyone not carrying a proper documentation would be suspect and subject to immediate deportation. Accused would be deported to Africa, not across the border as they are today. Let them try to walk back as they so often do now. And an ancillary benefit would be that anyone looking poor would be suspect. After all, no real American is poor, and thus subject to instant removal. This would eliminate many undesirables and at the same time bring down the unemployment rate. In Africa, these deportees would create a rich pool of English-speaking, low-paid workers begging to be put to work by American industry. All in all, it would be a great opportunity for all. This is a program that President-to-be Romney should implement as soon as he takes office. Yours, T. Earl Grayfellow." I'm not sure of what you think of this solution.
Yeah, well,
I may have reservations myself.
yeah, but again, it's another Swiftian move of a modest proposal for dealing with the excess birth rate in Ireland, in a sense. But yeah, that reminds me of this other story this week about the Texas Republican Party, and its platform includes a plank about what's called knowledge-based education. And it says that we oppose the teaching of higher order thinking skills, values clarification, critical thinking skills, and similar programs that are simply a relabeling of outcome-based education. or master learning, which focus on behavior modification and have the purpose of challenging the students' fixed beliefs and undermining parental authority. Elsewhere in the document, the platform stipulates that every Republican is responsible for implementing this platform. So this document has a curious history. It was submitted to the platform committee, apparently, of the Republican Party of Texas, and it passed, including this plank opposing the teaching of critical thinking skills. And then someone noticed it after it was passed and voted upon that this would be a public relations difficulty to oppose the teaching of critical thinking skills. So it's called a mistake to have it included in there, but they can't change it now because it was voted on and it's in the platform for the next year or two.
It does seem quite in keeping with much of the Tea Party ideology.
Yeah. The chairman of the Education Subcommittee, this says, indicated that it was an oversight of the committee that the plank should not have included critical thinking skills after values clarification. It was not the intent of the subcommittee to present a plank that would have indicated that the Republican Party of Texas in any way opposed the development of critical thinking skills. So little oversight there, but some other choice items in the Texas Republican Party platform. We urge review and revision of those portions of the USA Patriot Act and related executive and military orders and directives that erode constitutional rights and essential liberties of citizens. That seems fine. Emergency war powers and martial law declarations. We strongly urge Congress to repeal the War Powers Act and end our declared state of emergency. Any declaration of martial law should be approved by Congress, and so on. And some other curiosities on livestock and pet locations. We oppose a mandatory animal identification system. What do you think is going on there, David?
Well, it's very hard to say.
Yeah.
I think they have not been using their critical thinking.
Yeah, right. There is a law now demanding that in fighting the animal diseases, in particular the bad ones that threaten human health, that there be a system of tagging and identification that will show where every cow, for example, in the beef industry came from. And apparently they're opposed to that. It's too much government regulation.
Well, it would certainly be helpful with some diseases such as mad cow disease, where it's so important to know where the source of the animal.
Yes. Yeah. On homosexuality, we affirm that the practice of homosexuality tears at the fabric of society and contributes to the breakdown of the family unit. Homosexual behavior is contrary to the fundamental unchanging truths that have been ordained by God, recognized by our country's founders, and shared by the majority of Texans. So homosexuality must not be presented as an acceptable alternative lifestyle in public policy, nor should family be redefined to include homosexual couples. We believe there should be no granting of special legal entitlements or creation of special status for homosexual behavior, regardless of the state of origin. Additionally, we oppose any criminal or civil penalties against those who oppose homosexuality out of faith, conviction, or belief in traditional values. And finally, on the UN Treaty on the Rights of the Child, we unequivocally oppose the United States Senate's ratification of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. So I'm not up to date on what that includes, but apparently there are prohibitions on using child soldiers and the like. So what you said reminded me of this kind of statement by the Republican Party of Texas.
Well,
Curiously, The Republican Party of the District of Columbia has taken an entirely different point of view on homosexuality.
It's interesting. The evangelicals seem to be reconsidering their stand on homosexuality, in particular the curing of homosexuals. And this more enlightened view that they seem to have appears to run quite counter to the Texan.
Yeah. So a lot of people are very conflicted, I think, and confused about the whole issue. But in the name of equal rights for everyone, I think there's a strain toward consistency and a realization that this status of being gay or homosexual or whatever should not interfere with one's human and civil rights otherwise. And it's just simply nobody else's business what people do in private, consenting adults do behind closed doors. And that's basically my attitude as well. But some people seem to have horrifying fantasies about what's going on there. And then we get this statement that homosexual behavior tears at the fabric of society and contributes to the breakdown of the family unit. There's no evidence offered for that, and I challenge anyone to provide any. But we'll see. On to the next point. What's going on in Washington? The Pentagon, according to this report, is keeping ties to a contractor there, a military contractor, that is under review for illegal behavior, and there's no proof that what it's doing is having any effect. This is USA Today, July 5th. Military leaders request that this firm, its top propaganda operator, contractor in Afghanistan for $60 million over the next year, that it be kept even as it's under criminal investigation for not paying taxes and for some other misdeeds here. The Pentagon suspended one of the principals in the organization from receiving contracts after he admitted he was responsible for a misinformation campaign against two USA Today journalists who wrote about the company and the military's information operations programs, according to an Army letter to him obtained by the newspaper. The Pentagon has retained its this company even after it is under criminal investigation by the military's Inspector General, and its co-owner has been suspended from receiving military contracts. What this points to is the difficulty, it is said, of getting rid of Pentagon contractors. They tend to hang in there year after year. They have friends in the Pentagon, it appears, and it's difficult to get rid of them. The operative paragraph here is that they, according to the General Dempsey, have not been definitively shown to engage in criminal activities yet, so they're going to be kept on for another year. Retaining a company under criminal investigation shows how dependent the military has become on contractors and how difficult it is to get rid of them, said a lawyer with the Project on Government Oversight, a government watchdog group. We often hear that it's impossible to fire a government employee, but it also looks like it is impossible to part ways with a federal contractor, this says. So it's a curious situation. Similar consideration then with respect to top corporate executives. In the local paper on May 16th, we hear about Jamie Dimon, the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, who admitted recently that the firm had lost at least $2 billion and maybe as much as $5 billion or maybe more in its risk-taking operations. The CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase offered a quick but blunt apology to shareholders Tuesday for a $2 billion trading loss that should never have happened, and survived a push to strip him of the title of chairman of the board. So this was at the annual meeting of J.P. Morgan Chase. He spent at this meeting 4 minutes talking about the trading loss and steps the company had taken to address it, and just 2 more talking about accomplishments over the past year. The loss disclosed Thursday rattled investor confidence in the largest bank in the United States and the ability of Wall Street to fight regulatory changes more than 3 years after the financial crisis. It also added some theatrics to the J.P. Morgan annual meeting, traditionally a state affair. Of the trade that lost so much money, an ill-timed bet on the so-called credit derivatives, Dimon said, "This should never have happened. I can't justify it. Unfortunately, these mistakes are self-inflicted." Speaking with reporters later, he added, "The buck always stops with me." Dimon won a non-binding shareholder endorsement of his pay package at this same meeting from last year, which totaled $23 million, according to Associated Press analysis of regulatory filings. Most of the shareholder ballots, this says, were cast in the weeks before Dimon revealed the trading loss, which was convenient for him. Okay, I'm going to take a break here from this depressing news and talk about some of the other shows coming up on Urbana Public Television, Channel 6 locally. Weekdays, 7 a.m., Democracy Now!, the War and Peace Report with Amy Goodman. 8 a.m., The Big Picture with Tom Hartman, which I think has been getting better and better recently. Do you ever see it, David?
I have not been watching it.
Yeah. 8 a.m., that runs from 8 a.m. then to 9. And then at noon, The David Pakman Show. Monday and Friday, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., The Tom Hartman Program, a live call-in show. And Wednesdays on Wednesday the 11th, 11 p.m., Aware on the Air, which will be a rerun of this program, I assume. Thursday, the 12th, 1 o'clock, The Populist Dialogues, Can We Afford Health Care for All? Part 1 of 2. Friday the 13th, 1 p.m., Labor's Worldview. 7 p.m., The Julia Song Show. Cyberpunics, it's called. I wonder what that is. And that's the usual time slot, by the way, at news for news from Neptune. But the anchor of that show is out of town, and so we'll be running the interviews by Julian Assange while he was under house arrest in England, I believe. That will be broadcast again on Saturday the 14th, again, Bastille Day, 2 p.m., Cyberpunics again, 7:30 p.m., the new Arab debates, should there be a second Egyptian revolution. So a lot of conflict there again, figuring out who is going to be in power and have the authority in Egypt. The military is resisting the elected president of Egypt, and the parliament has been ruled out of office by the Supreme Court there, and they are having a great deal of difficulty figuring out who's going to be running things. Well, I want to turn to something else then about the banking system. You may have heard this week of the so-called LIBOR scandal, which erupted primarily in England. We've not heard a whole lot about it here, but it is certainly going to affect us in this country as well. LIBOR, LIBOR, stands for the London Interbank Offered Rate. It is the interest rate, the loan rate, at which many other loan rates are keyed around the world, and there are billions upon billions, more money than most people can ever imagine or conceive, of dollars riding on this rate. So this says this rate is the one used to set prices on an estimated 800 trillion with a T in global financial instruments. That's $116,000 worth for each person on Earth, ranging from complex derivatives to student loans. That's a problem for holders of bank stocks, which includes just about anyone who owns a mutual fund or 401k. Barclays Bank, based in London, agreed last week to pay $453 million to settle allegations that it manipulated LIBOR, which stands for the London Interbank Offered Rate, as I said. As the Wall Street Journal reported Thursday, it's likely only the first. More than a dozen banks in 3 continents are under investigation. How is this rate arrived at? It's interesting. LIBOR is compiled by asking 18 banks what they think they would have to pay if they needed money. Some banks may have submitted artificially low responses during the global financial crisis to give the appearance of high creditworthiness. Others may have tinkered with the reading to profit from trades or avoid losses. The Barclays settlement is affordable at less than 7% of the company's projected profits this year, but the size of the legal claims it and other banks face is difficult to imagine. So this says that LIBOR may have been subject to rigging for more than 5 years. In Thursday trading, Bank of America lost 3% of its stock market value, and J.P. Morgan more than 4%. Investors are worried about more than possible legal claims. So this looks like another reason to have more bank regulation. But the bankers are, of course, oppose that. They're opposed to it. And the arguments that you hear are, first, that this is a very rare thing. This is due to only a few bad apples. And otherwise, people are generally honest and upright in the industry, and it's a terrible libel against them to suspect them of dishonest or criminal dealings. At the same time, there's a survey this week, which I thought was interesting to contrast with that. Many Wall Street executives say wrongdoing is necessary, according to a new survey. A quarter of Wall Street executives see wrongdoing as a key to success, according to a survey by whistleblower law firm Labaton Zuccarello released on Tuesday. In a survey of 500 senior executives in the United States and the United Kingdom, 26% of the respondents say they had observed or had firsthand knowledge of wrongdoing in the workplace, while 24% say they believed financial services professionals may need to engage in unethical or illegal behavior to be successful. 16% of the respondents said they would commit insider trading if they could get away with it, according to this law firm. And 30% said their compensation plans created pressures to compromise ethical standards or to violate the law. One partner in the law firm said, when misconduct is common and accepted by financial services professionals, the integrity of our entire financial system is at risk. The survey's release comes as the fallout from Barclays. LIBOR rating scandal continues in other banks, including Citigroup, HSBC Holdings, Royal Bank of Scotland, and UBS AG, await the outcome of an industry-wide probe. So I think this is interesting. On the one hand, we're told that when these scandals erupt, first of all, the top executives almost invariably claim that they knew nothing about it, that they were just so naive and innocent. They had no idea that this criminal activity was going on under their noses during those years. And then we're told, well, this was carried on only by a few bad apples in the industry, and we shouldn't suspect them all. But this article now suggests that the other excuse is, well, everybody does it. So which is it? The incentive to lie, cheat, and steal in American capitalism is just so overwhelming. That's one reason why there's so much of it. And some people are asking, have been asking actually for decades, for generations, could we have a system in which there is no such incentive, that the incentive is to be virtuous in effect and not to lie, cheat, and steal? So other surveys have been done asking high school and college students why they cheat, for example, as many of them will admit to doing if they're allowed to respond anonymously. And again, the answer is largely the same. In order to compete, we have to do it. We have no choice, no alternative. Notice that that line is always false. There always is an alternative. You could always do otherwise, and that is not lie, cheat, and steal, but they don't like that alternative. So what can be done? Well, there's some encouraging signs then from across the ocean, and I want to mention a couple of points here. One, following up on a letter from our friend Bob Naiman that appeared in May in the local paper, saying in the headline, Obama should follow the French leader's move. This is the recently elected president of France, François Hollande. He has promised to speed the withdrawal of French troops from Afghanistan and stop the killing and the expense there for France. And the question is, why can't the USA do the same? Here's what we're slated to spend in Afghanistan this year, $88.5 billion. But in this country, the former food stamp program that provided food sustenance to poor people is under attack and could reach as much as $80 billion, which you will notice is still less than what Afghanistan is costing us in dollars, that is, not to mention in lives and people being wounded and driven into post-traumatic stress disorder and the like. The majority of Americans, including the majority of Republicans, want U.S. troops to come home from Afghanistan soon, not in 2014. Hollande's pledge is a chance for change. Americans agree our troops should come out. Would it be better to withdraw all our troops faster together than have other countries withdraw sooner and leave our troops in Afghanistan alone? So the socialist president of France, I think, has gone to some lengths to try to improve the situation. Here's another indication. France is to tax corporations and the wealthiest to address the budget gap. As he promised throughout his presidential campaign, François Hollande introduced a new 2012 corrective budget that calls for, among other measures, a one-off tax levy on the nation's wealthiest individuals and large corporations to help address the nation's current financial woes. We face an extremely difficult financial and economic situation, the finance minister said at a press conference in Paris. The wealthiest households, the big companies, will be asked to contribute in 2012 and 2013. The effort will be particularly large. According to Reuters, The taxes on individuals will target those with a net wealth of more than 1.3 million euros or $1.63 million, and aim to raise nearly 2.3 billion euros in this budget cycle alone. The levy focused on large banks and oil-related energy firms is designed to bring an additional 1.1 billion euros. Both increases are part of a scheme to close what the nation's state auditor says is a 6 to 10 billion euro budget gap in 2012. Other measures include the lifting of a payroll tax holiday and a levy on dividends and stock options. The tax rate on those making more than $1 million or 1.3 million euros will be 75% come 2013. So there is something, I think, if anyone is serious about our national debt and deficit. Another thing that Holland is doing, it might deserve some emulation.
I would comment that that 75% marginal tax rate is still less than the marginal tax rate we had in the 1950s,
yes,
when we were very prosperous.
Yes, there was enormous economic growth during that time, and yet the tax rate reached as high as 90% under in the top bracket under Eisenhower, I understand. So there's an ongoing budget trimming effort going on in France, but they seem to have figured out how to deal with the situation, and it took a socialist president there to do it. So this is the remaining thing then that I wanted to comment on today, is to what extent can we look to France as an example of what can be done to restore democracy and equal rights in this country and around the world. Curious fact that the American Constitution used to be looked to as a model by emerging countries around the world, and many countries' constitutions were modeled on it for a long time, but that has declined precipitously in the past decade or two, as these countries no longer interested in copying the American Constitution, in part because I think they see what we have become. That is the most militant and militarized and exploitative country in the world. Instead, some are looking back to France, which has its own history of dealing with dictators and elites. And I think the arrival of Bastille Day on Saturday, July 14th should remind us of that. In fact, the newly elected democratic leader of Burma, Aung San Suu Kyi, whatever her name is, recently elected to the parliament there after a bit of a democratic opening in Burma, Myanmar, was in France recently and said that her inspiration was actually the French Revolution of 1789. So there was a lot of ugly stuff that went on during the French Revolution, many people killed, and so on. But it was a turning point in world history in a way that the American Revolution of 1776 really was not. It was more of a rebellion against the supposedly onerous taxes and domination by the King of England. But on which side more people were killed, I have no idea. But there was a high cost to bringing back the reform in France. It led to the rise of Napoleon and a lot of other things there that I wouldn't care to defend. French imperialism took over a good deal of Africa and invaded Egypt and the like. And there's a very checkered history there of things that I certainly wouldn't want to praise at all. But on the other hand, in France now, they have a socialist president. They have a medical system for everyone, which is rated by some as the best in the world. And it's completely what is called socialized medicine. And they're doing some good things. They have their own troubles with minorities, immigrants, and so on. We've seen some violent reactions in the past few years in the slums surrounding Paris and the like. But it looks like they're making some progress there. So we have an unfortunate history in this country of calling them names, especially when France didn't participate in the invasion of Iraq 10 or 12 years ago. And there was a lot of ugly talk about the surrender monkeys, and we should rename the French fries freedom fries. Remember all that stuff?
Oh, yes, indeed.
Yeah. And it was crazy. But there's a long history we have of good relations with France and our dependence on them. During the Revolutionary War, for example, you should look up Lafayette, the Marquis de Lafayette, who was a prominent figure in the American Revolution, and an aide-de-camp to George Washington, and a friend of Thomas Jefferson, and contributed enormously to the American Revolution against France that we identify with the year 1776. Then he went back to France and kind of wavered back and forth on both sides between the revolutionaries and the royalists. He was very much of the aristocratic class himself, very wealthy, but his contributions to the American cause were such that there are many cities and streets around the USA that are now named after Lafayette, including Fayetteville, North Carolina. There's a Lafayette Street in Bloomington, Illinois. And I think it's time to acknowledge what France has done for us, and to pay tribute to what they've contributed to world history and to democracy. So liberté, equalité, fraternité, which sound like good ideas to me, although we seem to have a lot of trouble with fraternity and the feeling of community, and that we're all in this together in this country, because it's thought to be the case that it's every man for himself. Any thoughts on the French?
Well, they have fluctuated more widely between absolutist government and probably a more democratic form than we have in this country.
Yeah.
In this past century, I think they have been more constant in their democratic approach, even if the last president was not in keeping with that.
Yeah.
The new present one does seem to be. United States, I think, may have problems with our constitutional form of government. The parliamentary government may actually be inherently more democratic than the balance of powers government we have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's more representative of many minority interests, typically. The problem many see with it is it appears to be unstable in many cases, and governments are constantly falling and trying to put together another coalition that will be capable of governing and so on. But there's no perfect way to do it, but they don't have such a problem with the supposed winner-take-all system that prevails here. And what it leads to, well, is the situation where the popular vote does not determine who wins the election, as we saw in 2000, when Al Gore won the popular vote by some 500,000 votes, and yet lost the election because of the Electoral College and the appeal to the Supreme Court to disqualify a lot of voters. So these operations are still going on. The attempt to disqualify many voters, to demand that they have photo IDs and the like. The reason being given that there's a lot of voter fraud going on. Actually, there's very little voter fraud going on. And the judgment on this seems to be, by those who have looked at it closely, that many people otherwise eligible to vote are being kept from voting because of this requirement, the hassle involved, and so on, than those that are being kept from voting because they're trying to do it fraudulently because they're not eligible. So this is another limitation in our democracy that we've been hearing a good deal about, and probably will be hearing a great deal more about it. There are some people who would like to disqualify as many voters as possible, because those not having photo IDs tend to be people who will probably vote Democratic. That is, the aged, the very young people, minorities, the poor, and so on. And so it's a very effective move to strike from the voter rolls those who are unable to obtain the relevant documentation. And we've also reached the stage where everyone is apparently expected to carry around documentation of their status at this point, especially in Arizona and so on. It's now legal for the police to demand proof that you're a citizen of anyone on the street who strikes them as looking foreign or Mexican or Hispanic or the like. So there's supposed to be a stronger requirement than that, but I'm afraid that's what it will come to, is that we're going to start demanding documentation of status from a lot of people. And curiously, during the Cold War, of course, this was always remarked on as one of the prime attributes of totalitarianism. That's what they did in the Soviet Union, is demand that people produce documents about their status. And this, again, is something that free men should never be required to do. So do you have documentation of your status with you, David?
Probably a driver's license and nothing more.
Yeah, yeah.
Not even my Social Security card.
Right, right.
There's another element to this. In the South particularly, but elsewhere, if you have a felony conviction, you forfeit your right to vote.
Oh, yes.
And there are those who would claim that in certain states, a lot of people have had felony convictions where they found plea bargaining their only course of evading long prison terms, but in so doing, they lost their vote.
Yeah, yeah.
This is part of a long-standing tradition of using the police to control certain minorities and even de facto slavery,
Yeah.
which more people should be aware of.
Yeah, there's a very ugly history of some employers hiring Mexican casual labor, and many of them being what we call illegals or undocumented. And then when these people turn up to be paid a few days or a week later, they're told, sorry, you're fired, out of here. And what can they do? They can't go to the police. So they're simply dismissed and are never paid anything. And apparently this has happened repeatedly, especially in the Southwest. where it's very common. Why do we continue to have this situation where there are so many undocumented workers, estimated some 11 million of them in this country? Primarily because employers want them, they demand them. And you go into any restaurant or hotel, look at the housekeeping staff and so on, you'll find that they're overwhelmingly Hispanics, and they're hired because they work for less than Americans. They do a lot of the so-called stoop labor on the farms, ranches, and plantations, especially across the South. And I think it's Alabama that has discovered this, that it was a law recently that these people would be arrested and expelled. And they've discovered that this has crippled the economic development of the state. There's just not enough people to do that kind of labor. The line is always, well, there are many of unemployed Americans, or real Americans, who need jobs and will do that. And the fact is that they simply won't do it.
Very true.
Yeah, they consider themselves above all of that, of doing this kind of hand labor in the fields in the hot sun.
Well, too many of them are not physically able to do this kind of work.
Yes.
Working out in the fields in the past week would have killed many of us.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So a big reason for them being here, the undocumented workers, is that the employers want them, and they have tremendous influence in Washington. And that's one reason why we've not been able to enact a immigration reform that pleases everyone, is because some people very much want them here and are benefiting enormously in economic terms by having them here. Okay, well, I have in turn doffed my beret and put on my French Foreign Legion cap, which is the residue of a skit I participated in a couple of years ago. As a reminder of our theme today, Hail to the Blue, White, and Red, the French tricolor. Not that I have any brief for the French Foreign Legion, which did a lot of very ugly stuff in Africa, and especially in Algeria. But just as a reminder that France has done and is starting to do some very worthwhile, I think, and good things that we could perhaps begin to emulate. So we're reaching the end of our time here. I finally want to mention a organization started in France, Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, an international medical humanitarian organization created by doctors and journalists in France in 1971. This says that the Doctors Without Borders is an organization that provides independent, impartial assistance to in more than 60 countries to people whose survival is threatened by violence, neglect, or catastrophe, primarily due to armed conflict, epidemics, malnutrition, exclusion from health care, or natural disasters. Doctors Without Borders provides an independent and impartial assistance to those most in need. It also reserves the right to speak out, to bring attention to neglected crises, challenge inadequacies, or abuse of the aid system, and to advocate for improved medical treatments and protocols. In 1999, Doctors Without Borders received the Nobel Peace Prize. This says that its work is based on humanitarian principles of medical ethics and impartiality. There have been no scandals that I know about in in connection with its operations. It operates independently, this says, of any political, military, or religious agendas. Medical teams conduct evaluations on the ground to determine a population's medical needs before opening programs, aiming to fill gaps that exist rather than replicating services that are already offered or reach communities that are not being assisted. The key to its ability to act independently in response to a crisis is its independent funding. 90% of Doctors Without Borders' overall funding and 100% of the American branch's funding comes from private, non-governmental sources. In 2009, Doctors Without Borders had 3.8 million individual donors and private funders worldwide. So as an organization, it is neutral and very worthwhile thing, I think, for people to consider to contribute something in support of such an organization, which, again, doesn't take any political stands. It simply helps people in need, whatever their political stand or opinions may happen to be. Okay, once again, we've reached the end of our time here. I'll mention, look for Urbana Public Television, local channel 6, on weekday mornings at 8 for Amy Goodman, at 9 for Tom Hartman. And I assume we'll be back next week with some further comments about the themes of war and racism and some related topics. Thank you for watching, and good night.